All right, quick question. What if I told you that in ancient Rome, one outfit could silence a room, start a riot, or get you arrested? Yeah, clothing wasn't just fashion, it was power, and Romans knew exactly how to wear it. Picture this. You're standing in a crowded Roman street, dust in the air, vendors shouting, and then someone walks past wearing a bright white toga with a thick purple stripe. Conversations stop, people step aside. Nobody needs to ask who that person is. The clothes already said it. In Rome, what you wore told everyone who you were, how much power you had, and how far you were allowed to go in life. Let's start with the toga. Because this thing, it was basically political armor. The toga wasn't just a piece of cloth, it was huge, heavy, complicated. You couldn't work in it, you couldn't run in it, which was the whole point. Wearing a toga meant you didn't need to do manual labor. You had status, time, authority, and not everyone was allowed to wear one. Slaves, no chance. Foreigners, nope. Only Roman male citizens. So the moment you saw a toga, you knew you're looking at someone with rights. But not all togas were equal. Oh no. Rome loved hierarchy. A plain white toga meant you were an ordinary citizen. Respectable, legal, but not powerful. Now add a purple stripe. Just one stripe. Suddenly you're a magistrate or a senator. That purple dye came from crushed sea snails and cost a fortune, which is why purple became the color of power. If you wore it, you weren't just rich, you were important. And if you wore a fully purple toga, congratulations. You're either the emperor or about to be executed for pretending to be one. Seriously, purple was so exclusive that wearing too much of it without permission could get you punished. Fashion crimes were real crimes in Rome. Now let's talk about armor. Because power didn't just walk around, it marched. Roman generals didn't wear basic armor into public events. They wore muscle cuirasses, armor sculpted to look like the perfect male body, chiseled abs, broad chest, idealized strength. This wasn't protection. This was propaganda. When a general stood in front of the crowd wearing armor that made him look godlike, the message was clear. I am strong. I am disciplined. I am chosen by the gods. Follow me. And the helmet, often decorated, crests, feathers, designs meant to make the wearer look taller, larger, more intimidating. On the battlefield and in parades, appearance mattered almost as much as skill. Now shift your eyes to Roman women, because their clothing spoke just as loudly, just differently. Elite Roman women didn't wear togas. That was actually a punishment reserved for prostitutes or disgraced women. Respectable women wore the stola, long, flowing, elegant. The stola signaled honor, marriage, respectability. It told society, this woman belongs to a proper Roman household. And the richer the woman, the more layers. Fine fabrics, imported dyes, gold-threaded edges. Jewelry wasn't subtle either. Rings, bracelets, hairpins made of ivory or gold. Hair especially mattered. Hairstyles were power statements. Roman elite women spent hours having their hair curled, braided, stacked, and pinned into elaborate designs. Some styles were so complex they required slaves whose only job was hair. When a woman walked through the city with an intricate hairstyle, everyone knew this household is wealthy enough to afford time, servants, and luxury. And then there's the emperor. Roman emperors were masters of visual power. Augustus, for example, was older, shorter, and not physically intimidating. But in statues, perfect. Youthful, calm, strong, always dressed in idealized military or civic clothing. Clothes were carefully chosen to project stability, authority, divinity. Later emperors leaned even harder into symbolism. Gold embroidery, purple cloaks, crowns inspired by gods. By the time you saw an emperor, you weren't just looking at a man. You were looking at an institution. Now let's talk about the people who had no power, because Rome made sure you could spot them instantly. Slaves didn't have uniforms at first. Masters worried that if slaves dressed alike, they'd realize how many of them there were, and revolt. So slaves wore simple, rough clothing, practical, forgettable, designed to blend into the background. Poor citizens wore tunics, short, undyed, cheap fabric. You could tell someone's income just by the color of their clothes. Bright dyes meant money, dull browns and grays meant survival. Even shoes mattered. Senators wore special boots, soldiers wore military sandals. Slaves often went barefoot. Every step reinforced where you stood in society. And here's the thing, Romans enforced this hard. There were laws about what you could wear, when you could wear it, and how much luxury was allowed. These were called sumptuary laws, and they existed to keep social classes visible. Rome didn't want confusion. They wanted hierarchy on display at all times, because power works best when everyone can see it. So when you imagine ancient Rome, don't just picture marble buildings and gladiators. Picture a city where clothing spoke before people did, where a strip of purple could change how strangers treated you, where armor turned men into legends, where fabric decided your freedom. Romans didn't dress for comfort. They dressed to be seen. They dressed to dominate. And honestly, not much has changed. Luxury brands, designer logos, tailored suits. Power dressing is still everywhere. Rome just perfected it first. So next time you see a statue of a Roman in flowing robes or polished armor, remember, it wasn't just art. It was a message. And if you want more stories like this, the kind that reveal how power actually worked in the ancient world, stick around. Because Rome always dressed to impress.